Hi everyone, and welcome back to Anne's Family Recipe. Today I'm making a Brazilian Steakhouse inspired burger. So I have a chimichurri burger on a homemade Brazilian cheese bread bun, and for the sides I'm making a roasted sesame cauliflower and fried bananas. This video is sponsored by the Pennsylvania Beef Council, and I am so excited to be partnering with them again to share with you a new recipe featuring one of my favorite ingredients, beef. May is beef month, so it is the perfect time for a simple but flavorful recipe for you to try at home. When I was in college, my choir went on tour to South America, which was just an unforgettable experience. And when we were in Brazil, we went to a couple churrascarias, or Brazilian steakhouses, and my life was changed. I have loved them so much ever since. The servers bring unlimited amounts of fire roasted meats to your table, and they are hand slicing the most delicious cuts of beef right onto your plate off of these giant skewers. It is such a cool experience. Today I'm making a juicy beef burger flavored with chimichurri sauce, which is a traditional South American condiment. It's very herby, bright green, it adds so much flavor. Now, instead of using a traditional bun, which you could do, I am making homemade Brazilian cheese bread, and this stuff is amazing. It tastes exactly like the restaurant. You are gonna love this recipe. Now, the other part of the Brazilian steakhouse experience is the salad bar, and we're not just talking like romaine lettuce and some cherry tomatoes. It is the most expansive salad bar you will ever see. So all kinds of vegetables, fresh and roasted, different kinds of salads with beans and roasted veggies, seafood, and then you have like this massive charcuterie board too. There's all kinds of meats and cheeses, and then there's hot food too. Plus they're bringing the cheese bread, the fried bananas, which we're making today too, mashed potatoes, fried yucca to your table. It is insane. So let me take you to my little Brazilian steakhouse today with this chimichurri burger. The first thing I'm making is the chimichurri sauce because you want to refrigerate this for a couple of hours before using it. So I'm starting with 1 bunch of parsley and 1 bunch of cilantro and putting it right into my food processor. That makes this so easy to throw together. Then I have 2 cloves of garlic that I peeled and just chopped up roughly. Then I added in 2/3 a cup of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. Then I seasoned this with a sprinkle of kosher salt and pepper and some red pepper flakes, and that is totally to taste. You can definitely make this a little bit spicier if that's what you like. Then I put the lid on and pureed this into this vibrant green sauce. Next up are the Brazilian cheese buns, also known as pão de queijo. Kind of, I think. That's my attempt at Portuguese pronunciation. But these are so simple. You're going to use your blender for the batter. All you have to do is add 1 egg, a cup of milk, a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. I think I use sunflower oil, but they're very similar in flavor. And then I used a 1/2 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese and a 1/2 cup of mozzarella. Then you puree this just for about 10 seconds on high. You stop your blender and add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And then you put the lid back on and remove the little cap in the center. And then I measured out 2 cups of tapioca flour, which I found at my local grocery store. You could also order it online, and that makes these gluten-free. You incorporate this over a low speed, 1 spoonful at a time until it is all added. And that's your batter. So next I took my regular muffin tin and sprayed 8 wells. This ended up making a little bit over 8 of these little cheese breads, and you fill them up almost to the top with the batter. And as a side note, if you weren't making this recipe specifically for these slider buns, you could use a mini muffin tin to make those bite-sized cheesy breads that you would find at the Brazilian Steakhouse. These bake at 400 degrees for 25 minutes, and they were seriously perfection. I was super proud of myself when these came out of the oven. They remind me a little bit of popovers, but they're not as eggy inside. They are really cheesy and a little bit chewy too, from that tapioca flour. I want to tell you a very quick story about this roasted sesame cauliflower that I'm making next. A couple of years ago, I went on a trip actually with the Pennsylvania Beef Council to Washington, D.C., and our welcome dinner was at a Brazilian steakhouse. And I had the honor of being seated next to the executive chef for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And of course, I'm from the Pittsburgh area as well. So it was really fun to talk with him about all things Pittsburgh and our love for food. And we both got this cauliflower salad off of the salad bar and were in love with it. And we tried to kind of break it down and figure out all the ingredients inside. So today, I am gonna recreate that salad for you. This salad starts with 1 head of fresh cauliflower that I break down into little florets. So you kind of cut off the stem and the leaves and the core, and then it pretty much breaks itself down, really. You could break this off with your hands. You hardly even need a knife. But I sort of like to slice the florets in half so there's a lot of surface area for when you're roasting them. I scatter the cauliflower on top of a rimmed baking sheet, drizzle it with a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and then season it with salt and pepper and toss it around. And then this roasts at 425 degrees for about half an hour, or until it's golden brown and fork tender. The dressing actually has an Asian flair to it, so I'm combining 2 teaspoons each of sesame oil, rice wine vinegar, and soy sauce, along with a generous pinch of sugar, and then whisking this all together. Then you take the roasted cauliflower and toss it in the dressing and sprinkle some sesame seeds on top and mix it all together. And this side dish was really delicious. It tasted exactly like the one we had at the restaurant, and it's awesome because you can serve it pretty much at any temperature. I prefer it kind of at room temperature. It's also really good cold. And now it's on to the star of the show, the beef burgers. I'm using 80-20 ground beef, so this is 80% lean and 20% fat, which is gonna make a really juicy beef patty. And then I'm adding in a 1/4 cup of the chimichurri sauce that I made previously. So all you have to do is mix that in with your hands. This incorporates great flavor and a little extra moisture into your burger patties. And then you could grill these, you could pan sear these, or what I'm gonna do is broil them. And always be sure to wash your hands before and after working with raw beef. I don't have an actual broiler pan, so I just took a rimmed baking sheet and lined it with foil and sprayed it lightly with cooking spray. And then I made this 1 pound of ground beef into 8 small patties. Because if you think about those cheesy buns that we made, it's definitely more of a slider size, so I'm making smaller patties here today. And then I broiled these probably for about 6 minutes on the first side on high, and then flipped them and broiled them for another couple minutes until they were cooked through. And the USDA recommends cooking ground beef to an internal temperature of 160 degrees. You can see here I moved my top oven rack so it was about 2 or 3 inches away from the heat source. I think I mentioned my broiler was on high for this, so they get a nice char on the outside. And since I don't have a broiler pan, I used my turkey baster to remove some of the excess grease before I flipped the burgers and put them back in to finish cooking. Just so they wouldn't steam, I wanted them to maintain that little bit of crustiness on the outside, which has awesome flavor. The other side dish I'm making is caramelized bananas. So I took 4 bananas and sliced them into planks, and then I took a couple tablespoons of butter and melted that over medium-low heat in a nonstick skillet. Then I added in about a 1/4 cup of white sugar and stirred that around until it started turning brown and the sugar was dissolving. Then I placed the bananas inside and cooked those for a few minutes on each side until they were brown and caramelized on both sides. And these were super tasty, definitely a hit with my kids. Oh, and you will see here that before I flip them, I sprinkled them with a little bit of cinnamon too for some extra flavor. 2 tips for these bananas: keep the heat very low so they don't burn, and also don't use overripe bananas. You want them to actually be kind of firm, a little bit underripe, so that they don't totally fall apart as they're cooking. So now we're going to pull this meal all together. I'm taking one of my cheesy Brazilian buns, slicing it in half, then I'll top it with one of the little burger patties and a large dollop of my fresh chimichurri sauce. On the side, I had my roasted sesame cauliflower and those caramelized bananas, and this was such a tasty meal. All of these unique flavors and textures combined brought me right to that Brazilian steakhouse experience. But wait, there's more. So I made these burgers again because I felt like they were just missing a little bit of something texturally and flavor-wise. So I roasted my own red bell peppers. This is totally optional. First of all, you can find these at the grocery store in a jar, so you don't have to go through this process, but I had never done this before and I really wanted to try. It's very easy. You just quarter up a bell pepper, you discard the stem and the seeds, you roast it at 450 degrees for about a half an hour in the oven, and then you put it into a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap until it cools. That way the skin peels off easily and you can slice it into thin strips. Also for my burger, I wanted a little bit of crunch, so I went with red onion here. I sliced this paper thin so I'd get a little bit of that crunchy texture, but the flavor wouldn't be too overpowering. So again, I'm assembling my chimichurri burger, take two. I made another batch of my cheesy buns. They're very easy to make. This would make a great side dish for all kinds of dinners throughout your week. And then I topped it with another chimichurri burger patty, and this time I used the chimichurri sauce plus my homemade roasted red peppers and some thinly sliced red onion. And this burger was sensational. The chimichurri slider alone was very good, but this is what the burger needed. That little bit of extra textural element, there's a sweetness from the red peppers and a little bit of a bite from the onion, and this was fabulous. Definitely try out this recipe. You are going to love it. Thank you so much to the Pennsylvania Beef Council for sponsoring today's video. You can visit pabeef.org for your all things beef resource. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Instagram at Ann's Family Recipe and give this video a thumbs up if you love beef. Thank you so much for joining me here in my kitchen, and I'll see you again soon.